The Joe Biden border crisis, it continues to get worse. Hi, I'm Dan Stein, president of FAIR. And don't forget, hit our subscribe button to get all of our content here on YouTube or wherever else you're watching this important video. I'm joined today by Mark Morgan, who, of course, today is a senior fellow at FAIR, but he's also a former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. Of course, Mark brings seasoned experience, decades of experience, and he's just been down on the border with Tom Homan. Maybe you've seen some of the media from that. Mark, I mean, basically, what's the most important thing Americans need to know right now about this unfolding border crisis?
So there's a couple of things. One is this current administration is absolutely providing a spin, misdirection, and quite frankly, blatant lies with respect to what's happening. They're trying to convince American people that what they're actually seeing isn't what they're seeing. And we absolutely have an unmitigated crisis on the southwest border. But one thing that really struck me when I was down there, look, I've seen immigrants illegally enter the country before, right? We experienced this in 2019. The difference was we were honest with American people. We told them that it was the crisis that we had. But the difference was, and what really struck me was, back in 2019 and throughout the Trump administration, we were actively trying to do everything we can to prevent and stop the illegal migration. What struck me now was last week what I saw is, but this was all preventable, Dan. Look, we warned the administration prior to the election and after the election when Biden won. We provided exhaustive briefings to the transition team, and we warned them, if you do what they've done, you would see the numbers skyrocket, our border patrol facilities would be overcrowded, and you would create the crisis that we have right now.
Okay, so Joe Biden's been in public office for decades, maybe 45 years. Clearly, when he became president, of course, he was vice president, he must have known, obviously, watching Jimmy Carter, watching other administrations, that there are signals that you send that are interpreted by cartels and are received internationally when the U.S. changes policy. Is it possible to accept the fact that Biden intentionally produced this chaos and did so by design?
It's unequivocally, I think that's the answer, Dan. Look, like you said, I've been doing this for 35 years, served for 6 administrations, right and left. This is not a right or left thing. This is an American thing. Look, if it makes no sense from a sovereign nation perspective, from a rule of law perspective, from a national economic security perspective, what this administration doing makes no sense. For in my opinion, we can draw no other conclusion is that what they're doing right now with their open border policies, they're doing it because they see some sort of perceived political benefit, either through a census bump in House seats, or they believe that every illegal alien they give a pathway to citizenship, they believe it's going to equate to a Democratic vote. I think what we're seeing is power in politics at its worst, because nothing else makes sense, Dan.
But if the commander-in-chief, the one who's responsible for our sovereignty, our border controls, our national security, the conduct of our national defense and our foreign policy, I mean, if that person actually makes an affirmative decision to abandon the core and essential function of that office, which is defense of our borders, the equivalent would be taking the steps to resist an invasion by a foreign army. I mean, what are the constitutional remedies for the American people?
Look, I think Article 2 of the Constitution is in play here, and it's being talked about more and more. I think this president has abdicated his responsibilities under the Constitution to enforce the laws of this country to protect our national economic security. I truly believe that's what we're seeing right now. Look, we've been saying, and others like Tom Homan, the former ICE director, we've been saying that right now is what we are. This country is actually complacent in their duties, and they're actually assisting and facilitating now. It's beyond just encouraging and incentivizing, but they're actually facilitating illegal migration. But look, that's been their strategy all along. So people ask me, hey, Mark, they were caught flat-footed. They didn't have a strategy. And I respectfully disagree. They're doing exactly what they intended to do. They're creating reception centers at our border to release people as fast as humanly possible. And then preventing ICE from lawfully deporting them, creating a sanctuary country on the back end, again, because they see a perceived political benefit by doing so.
Well, do you think that you have so many great, wonderful Americans who work in these agencies, CPB, USCIS, and obviously Immigration Customs Enforcement? Do they see what's going on? And is there any concern that, education, housing, public welfare, social costs, fiscal integrity that all these things can be thrown in the balance if you lose perimeter control of your nation?
Yeah, look, I think the men and women of those organizations you just mentioned, Dan, are smart enough, and so they know that the economic impacts, but obviously they're focused on the law enforcement side, the rule of law. And look, it was just a couple of weeks ago when our current secretary. So talk about the president having experience. Our current secretary of DHS, Ali Mayorkas, remember he was the deputy secretary when we went through a couple of crisis situations as well. He knows better. And a couple of weeks back, he was given testimony, and he just blatantly lied to the American people. He said that two things that really struck me. One, he said that our borders are secure, and two, that our borders are closed. Those were just blatant lies. And at that moment, all the men and women of those agencies you just mentioned, he lost them. When you're talking about border patrol agents on the front line of our nation's border risking their lives every day, and their secretary tells them that our borders are secure, knowing full well that we had 171,000 apprehensions a month of March, 6,000 a day, that requires Border Patrol resources to be pulled off the front lines to provide the humanitarian care that's needed, leaving large areas of the border wide open and unsecure for drugs to pour through and criminal aliens to pour through. They're estimating right now, Dan, 1,000 gotaways a day. 1,000 a day. And look, those aren't your economic migrants. You're talking about those are criminal aliens, a good portion of them, gang members, pedophiles, rapists, murderers. That's a fact. So when the secretary makes those kind of comments, the rank and file, they know they're lying. And I tell you, they're getting overwhelmed right now. And again, what I started with, I think one of the reasons their morale is struggling so much is they know that it was preventable. And they know under the Trump administration, they had the tools, authorities, and policies that was effectively managing to prevent and stop the illegal migration and all that's been taken away.
So if there were 5 to 7 things that the Biden administration could do right now to really turn this thing around, can you name them?
I can. So look, the first thing that needs to be done is the Congress needs to fix TVPRA. That's the Trafficking Victims Reauthorization Act. And that tells this country right now, another element that's broken is that, look, if you're unaccompanied minor from Mexico, we reunite you with your family in Mexico. If you're outside Canada or Mexico, we keep you. It makes no sense. It's got to be fixed. The other issue is it's called the FSA, the Flores Settlement Agreement. It's a horrible lower court judicial activism settlement agreement that came out that said we can't hold unaccompanied minors or families more than 20 days. We can't get through the immigration process in 20 days. That's what initiated catch and release. Under the Trump administration, even though Congress, we really need Congress to fix it, that's when the President Trump came up with the Remain in Mexico policy that really took that incentive away and forced individuals to wait in Mexico instead of being released into the country. The third thing that needs to be done is credible fear. The initial standard in credible fear it's no standard at all. I mean, literally, they go to a computer and they print down the magic words to say, and if they say the magic word, boom, they're in the process. That's got to be fixed. I'd say 2 other things. One is ICE. We've got to ensure that ICE has the ability to detain people. It's proven over decade after decade. If we detain people while they go through their process and their claims are found to be invalid, we're able to remove them. We know when we release them in the United States, they don't show up. That's just a fact. The other thing that I would end off by saying is we need to continue to work with the government of Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries to reinstitute the unprecedented agreements that we had with them to address this as the regional crisis that it is, that this president, with a stroke of a pen, removed.
So we know what to do. We know what the answers are. So when the Biden administration and Psaki says it's all Trump's fault, they dismantle the system. And the media report that. I mean, what would you say?
It's just a blatant lie. And look, I don't get pleasure of saying that the current administration and our president is lying and that our current DHS secretary is lying, but that's just the facts. And to say that we dismantled, that is just, first of all, it's absurd. It's factually inaccurate. We inherited a system that has been broken for decades, as you well know, and our system is filled with loopholes. But we got together with Mexico, and we're able to get together with unprecedented agreements, as well as the Northern Triangle countries. During the Trump administration, the government of Mexico, look, I've been doing this for a long time, the government of Mexico stepped up like they never have in the history of illegal immigration. They strengthened their southern border, they strengthened their interior enforcement, and so did Guatemala, El Salvador, and the rest of the Northern Triangle countries to really work this as a regional crisis that it is. We developed programs and authorities like MPP or Made in Mexico that removed incentives. And that's just stuff that impacted the border. Let's talk about tools, the wall. Look, it's just another blatant lie. If anybody gets out there and says that walls are ineffective, Dan, it's just a lie. And our president, our commander in chief, clearly he hasn't talked to a single Border Patrol leader, because if he had, those Border Patrol leaders would tell him the same thing that they told President Trump. Walls work as part of a multi-layer strategy of infrastructure, technology, and personnel. It's a fact, and historical data supports that. The difference is President Trump, listen, I used to say all the time, it was never Trump's wall. It was America's wall. It was the Border Patrol agents' wall, because they're the ones that asked President Trump to build it.
Well, it seems like the only two people who aren't going to the border to look at the situation are the president and the vice president, right? Everyone else going down there. But these senators are coming back, Republican senators, and they're saying, it's up to Biden to fix it. I mean, there's no question that Biden created the crisis, and it's an opportunity to show the American people the relationship between U.S. policy and the flow. The argument that the pro-Biden factions are saying is, it's hurricanes, they're coming up because it's seasonal. I mean, everybody can see that Biden overtly sabotaged all the stuff that the Trump administration had done. So, they don't seem to care. They seem to be taking this position politically that they can somehow, as I think you've said in other contexts, they want to accommodate the flow. They believe, Mayorkas believes that they can create whole new categories of humanitarian parole, screen people in country, fly them in at night. The numbers won't matter. They'll bring in millions of people just through lawful channels so that the overcrowding situation will resolve itself, because they'll just count them racing into the country and then disappearing, which seems to be the Biden solution. New York State just voted to give billions of dollars to illegal aliens, right? Stimulus checks, what have you. That's used to be a form of harboring, a form of incentivizing illegal immigration. We have one entire political party, Mark, dedicated to maximizing, rewarding, and promoting illegal immigration, changing this country in many, many ways, undermining the fiscal solvency of the country, the quality of public education, housing, everything else associated with our ability to be successful as a country. In the Chinese, around the world, the U.S. is a laughing stock. Would you agree?
Dan, I tell you, everything that you just said, you're spot on. I could not have said it better myself. That's exactly what's happening right now. Look, I said prior to the election, and I was called a Trump sycophant, and I was called out for being overly political. But how ironic that everything that I predicted back in August and October is absolutely happening right now. I said back then, what you're going to see is a strategy of release, protect, and reward. Release individuals as fast as humanly possible, as you said, protect from lawful deportation, and then once they remain here illegally, we're going to reward them. Not just with amnesty, but day-to-day stuff, with very critical, important things, why they're coming, a job, right? Driver's license, ability to vote locally. The list goes on and on, free health care. I mean, look, so no wonder that we're seeing crisis level numbers come right now. And look, here's another false narrative that's out there, seasonal. I mean, Dan, it's just a joke. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact it's a blatant lie, and the data is right there, I encourage people, just take 5 minutes and educate yourself on the data. First of all, think about it. December, January, and February, seasonal numbers go up? No, that's not correct. They go down. And if you look at this time last year, so this March, 171,000. Last March under the Trump administration, 33,000. That's about a 418% increase. No, I'm sorry, that's not seasonal. The months of January, February, and March under this administration, the numbers have skyrocketed. We're seeing unprecedented numbers of unaccompanied minors. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but yet they're still working overtime to try to convince American people we're not seeing what we're actually seeing.
The average American, what does the average American make of the fact that every single time the Trump administration tried to tighten up a policy, procedure, new regulation, it was subject to multiple lawsuits by the ACLU and others who succeeded in getting politicized district judges to issue these injunctions, most of the time for the purposes of delay? At the same time, the Biden administration can bend the law, admit clearly inadmissible aliens, apparently without limit, give them jobs, give them work permits, give them access to our benefits, and no courts allowing American citizens or states to go in and challenge those rules. What does the average American make of this situation?
Look, I hope what they make is exactly what we were saying all along. What you just said is, look, we were hitting them pretty hard about the lower court judicial activism, that a judge thousands of miles away off the border in some lower court could actually set national policy, right? And you're right, it was clearly done for delayed tactics. And quite frankly, it was effective over the 4 years of the Trump administration. But we saw that again and again. So I hope that the American people now are seeing exactly what we were talking about, and they're seeing the hypocrisy and the difference. But look, we can't give up, right? Again, organizations like FAIR, I encourage people to get on the FAIR's website, follow Twitter, because it's very important they educate themselves. Look, the Attorney General for Texas, for example, A.G. Paxton, he did a great job. He forced that issue, and he did sue, just like what happened legitimately, and he pushed back on what is clearly an unconstitutional 100-day halt on deportations, and he won. And the judge, I'm paraphrasing, but the judge said something very important there, is he agreed that he saw that there would be immediate irreparable harm to the state of Texas. We need more citizens to get involved, encourage their state leaders to get involved and start pushing back. Just like we saw under the Trump administration, we need to be doing the same thing. Right now, the states are our last line of defense.
They sure are. If it weren't for Texas and a couple others, Montana and Arizona,
Yep.
Because getting citizens get standing, it's very difficult for citizens to get in and challenge these cases. Whereas the ACLU, they can, have a couple of anonymous illegal aliens and they bring all the way up to the Supreme Court. There's an asymmetry, and if the judiciary is only pushing to weaken controls and not uphold the rule of law, the whole system bends. And you can see Biden, Mayorkas, they take it downtown. They fully understand where all the weak links are. Mayorkas, the reason we oppose his confirmation is because he's established that he has this belief that he has the right to sort of craft new categories, new role, new laws to bring people in. And frankly, once people get in, because of our procedural process and constitutional protections, it takes heaven and earth to get them out. All right, last question, Mark, and thanks for all your great work and all the help that you're giving the American people continuing in the fight. What do you think the American people need to be really watching for now as the next step with what the Biden administration is planning to do?
Yeah, Dan, that's a good question. It was something you alluded to earlier. Here's my concern right now is under the Trump administration, our strategy was to prevent, apprehend, lawfully detain, and remove. That's hard to do. That takes multiple departments, multiple agencies, and really a whole of government approach. But that's what we were doing, and we were effective. We were getting better every single day at securing our borders and implementing that strategy. Right now, under the Biden administration, what concerns me is that they're going to get really good at being efficient at receiving people and releasing them as fast as possible. And so pretty quickly, it's not going to feel and look like the crisis that it actually is, because they're going to be able to build more facilities. They're not going to be overcrowded, and they're going to get really efficient at releasing people in the United States. They've reduced ISIS 90% of the authority to remove them once they're here illegally. So we've created a sanctuary country on the back end. And so it's not going to feel like the crisis it is as they bus and fly illegal aliens throughout the entire country. That's what's going to happen right now. We've got to pay attention to that.
So they're really building the illegal immigration superhighway, and it's kind of a fast track in, multi-lane process, multi-channel, illegal entry, mostly out of public view. What they're trying to do now is manage the congestion. It's the congestion that creates the visuals. So they figure they get rid of the congestion, they fly them in the dead of night. They were doing this in the Obama administration at a smaller level, but this was the thing we warned about after Biden was elected, that this was likely to happen. And sure enough, they're picking right up where they left off, 4 years ago. And it's really it's a national catastrophe for the American people to see this kind of blatant undermining of the rule of law. Congress sets these limits, establishes the rules. Congress, I guess, maybe they just don't matter anymore. I don't know. But if the chief executive can go rogue and just run his own immigration policy, this is where we're going. Well, we're going to have to keep the fight up because people are engaged now. We've had a great opportunity to alert the American people and educate them about what's going on. More Americans are involved than ever. So we'll keep up the fight. And Mark, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Dan. Absolutely.